I was hired in 1971. Two things are significant about this: that I was the first woman hired in the education department, and I was not a Catholic. And I think, for me, the important thing about that is that it suggests that even at that time, the college was beginning to change from an all-male school to a co-ed school. The first class I taught was in College Hall because this Olney Hall, where we're sitting now, was brand new, and the first classes were not taught here until the fall of '71. And at that time, the education department consisted of two people, Bill Binkowski and Gary Claybaugh, who is still here. And secondary education was the only ed major. And I was hired to teach educational psychology. I think the next person hired was Brother Anthony Wallace. Then we began to talk about beginning to develop a special education program, and Preston was the next person hired. After that, it gets really muddy in terms of who was hired and what the sequence of events was. But what was interesting to me was, as we began the special education program, what we wanted to do was to do a program that was unlike anything that had been done. It was so unique in terms of a way to educate new teachers in special education that our first assessment from the state, they really did not understand at all what it was we were trying to do. And they looked at our materials and they said, well, where are you going to teach about mental retardation? And where are you going to teach about physical handicaps? And where are you going to teach about emotionally disturbed? Where are those courses for? And we said, well, we're not going to have those. We're going to do an educational psychology base, looking at development, and then make accommodations as we look at the child first. That, and I wonder about how many, I'm kind of curious too, so I may ask you some questions while I'm doing this interview. How many students who are here today realize that this program was the one that the state then took on as a pilot program to see if it in fact did work. And the certification of special education teachers in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is based on the model that we established here in the 70s. The other thing that was unique, which will come as a surprise, I suspect, is that once the program got established, we only accepted 50 new students into the program each year. And so we had people lined up to come in because we interviewed every student. Every one of us who taught in the department supervised student teachers, so we all taught classes and we all supervised. So by the time you got to be a senior, you had everybody in the department for a course. And we had all had the experience of having all of the seniors in classes. And that was a kind of an interesting perspective on the program. It was a great way to evaluate the program, because I taught ed psych. When I walked into a class to supervise, I could see if the student was using those kinds of principles to actually plan the lessons, to work with the kids, to decide what method to use. So that look at the child first and not the label became the way we did the whole process. One of the things you're looking at is change, and as the special education program grew, then we added more faculty, and then as the college changed and moved from LaSalle College to LaSalle University. At that point, we began to talk about a master's degree program. And of course, all of us wanted to teach in the graduate program too, because that gives you a different kind of perspective on education when you're working with people who are generally classroom teachers in service, and you get a different kind of feedback. So as all of us moved into teaching at least one graduate course, that meant it was one less undergraduate course that we could teach. And for many people, supervision became the thing that got lost in the shuffle. And for a while, almost every supervisor of student teachers in the undergraduate program was a part-time person. And I don't know whether that's still the case or not. But there was something lost in that particular set of circumstances. You know, there were certainly pluses, but the minus was that undergraduate students didn't get always the full-time faculty to supervise them and to get that advantage. So I think that was one of those changes that happens at every university, and as programs expand, with all of the pluses, there's a downside to that. But to be the first woman to chair a department at the university was monumental. Partially because the brothers didn't know what to call me. I also ended up, as I came closer to retirement, I taught in women's studies here, which may not come as a surprise at this point to you. So that was that I think was another kind of milestone as women became students, and women just were, all over the place. I mean, we had equal numbers of women, and I think now there are probably more women students than men. Is that true? That's true. The other thing I do want to say is it has to do with the brothers, and I made lots of friends with brothers in my 28 years here, but I was probably here 10 years before I said to somebody, tell me about St. John the Baptiste. Tell me who he is and what he was about. The early brothers knew as much about special ed, I think, as we did. They just called it something different. The fundamentals that the brothers bring to the education process are part of what makes this department, at least, and I think the university as a whole, what it is. And Bucky Wallace, who is down at the end of this hall, you probably see him every day you come in here, was chair of the department just before I became chair, so in the late 60s and in 1970.